the other video?
Pardon?
The other video as well? You want to show the other video?
Which one did you play?
I just played the overall UCSD.
That's fine. We should start just 11:02. You want to start with it? We should start in here first.
With the...
So they can see us, yes.
Sure.
So they know there's human beings on the other side. That's always a plus. Ready?
They can see you, yes.
Excellent.
All right.
Good evening and welcome to the University of California, San Diego Health Sciences International. I'm Dr. Patrick Delaney. I'm the Education Director for Health Sciences International. And I suspect more importantly to you, I've been the Neurology Program Director, Residency Program Director here at UCSD for several years before this current position. I understand that most of the people listening to the webinar today are in their fourth year of medical school or later, and that's an important achievement in life. It's also an important time to think about the future and to think about where you want to be decades from now. For most of us, that means getting the best possible specialty education, honing or developing the ability to conduct clinical trials or to interpret research studies, and also developing the skills to be an academic leader. And so for many people, that draws them to the United States. As you can see, in terms of medical schools, that's 6 of the top 10 schools in the world, 10 of the top 20. And that's not an accident. That comes as the result of having a large science infrastructure, science education infrastructure. As you can see from the slide, 8 of the top 10 research universities, 7 of the top 10 biological science universities and life science universities. And so in medicine, it would be natural to say, great, I think I'll go train in the United States. I will take my USMLEs and pack my luggage. And that's fine, but I give you this slide. And so ignore the bottom about the USMLE step 2 for the moment. If you look at step 1, US seniors, medical students here in the US who applied for the match, those who are successful had a USMLE 1 score of 233. Those who are unsuccessful, 234. Independent on the display is anyone who did not graduate from a US medical school. That may be US citizens in the Caribbean, for instance, or in other international medical graduates. And you can see the mean accepted score, 234, great. Unmatched, 221 is not that much lower. I mean, that's really splitting hairs at that point. And I show you that to make the point that while it's good, it's very good to have a strong USMLE score, it clearly is not the deciding issue. And so if you want to pursue training in the United States, it's good to look at what the issues actually are. And if you go to the NRMP website, you can look at a recent questionnaire given to program directors, residency program directors, about the things that concern them the most about international applicants. I would take this individual slide very seriously. This is of the utmost importance. The thing that worries program directors the most is the time lag between graduating from medical school and the time you would be starting as their intern, resident, or fellow. And that time lag comes for many reasons. For some, it's finishing school and then spending a year and a half preparing to take the USMLEs. For others, it's pursuing a PhD and then a postdoc and then deciding to go back into medicine. Those sorts of scenarios really make program directors worried that one's clinical skills will have fallen off in that in-between time. Long gaps anywhere in the training are red flags when the program director is reviewing a record. And so it's of the utmost importance to minimize any time lag like that. I should say international graduates actually have a big advantage in the sense that most of the graduates, most of the medical students in the US, by definition, won't have completed an internship, and that's a huge positive for international graduates. You already have clinical experience as a physician. As you also probably know, you don't actually apply to the match. The match is like a giant lottery wheel. You're really applying to each of those individual programs, and more specifically to each of those individual program directors. And this list, as you look over it, you should get the sense that these are really about changing the perception of the program director towards you, not necessarily objective facts that are the same between any two applicants. And so let's look at that. Clinical unknowns. One can come from a fantastic medical school, but if the US program director who only trained in the US only knows other US schools, they may not know that the medical school that I went to is one of the best in the world or the best in the region. And that's a problem. It's a problem to overcome. The dean's letter is a requirement of your medical school by the match, and you and I have no control over how that's created. Here in the US, that's typically a 10 to 14 page document that itemizes your performance amongst your classmates and amongst the rest of the nation. And oftentimes it is not constructed that same way or to anywhere near the same detail. And that's a systems problem. So we'll leave that one go for a minute. Unrealistic aspirations are also a problem. If I have so-so transcripts and a low USMLE 1 score, and I want to be a neurosurgeon at Harvard, that may not be a direct path. And so we'll talk about that if there's time. And good test scores always help. I'll talk about what our programs here do because we've had those same, we've been working at those same obstacles for several years now. And the Bridge to Residency program here at UCSD is, I think, a good example of how to approach that. And so what we do when a scholar joins the program is we attach them to a faculty mentor. And that faculty mentor has several important roles to play. First, it allows the scholar to be continuously clinically active all the way up and through the match, which particularly if there's been a gap in training before that, that can resolve that issue. Now the program director knows, wonderful, this applicant has been training right up to the present moment, and so there won't be any rust. The faculty mentor also helps in allowing the applicant to be exposed to clinical research, either their own, the faculty member's own research, or in some cases, research that's available through the university as a whole, or education research. There's many different kinds of exposures that way. That often leads to publications or to poster presentations. Again, critically important because the program director, when they're looking at your application, they want to see that there's a long-standing or continuing interest in that specific specialty. And so that that helps very much. Our program, it's not our intent to help scholars simply qualify for internship and then struggle. That doesn't do the applicant any good. It doesn't do us any good. We really want people who will thrive during residency and then ideally become future ambassadors for UC San Diego. And so during the program, we do several things to facilitate that. I don't know if the term crash course is familiar to you. Here at UCSD, what that means is that our brand new residents who will be starting here in 6 days, I guess, the brand new residents in the various specialties don't have any specialty training yet, but on that very first day, as a neurology resident, for example, everyone else will assume that they know everything there is to know about their specialty. And that can be scary for them. It can also be scary for the program. And so most residency programs here have a crash course. They take the brand new resident out of the clinical arena for a few days, 3, 4, 5 days, and they intensively teach them everything they need to know about neurology or about neurosurgery or general surgery, so that they feel comfortable beginning their new career. In this program, in the Bridge to Residency program, we have taken each of those specialty crash courses, and during the course of the year, the scholars receive each one of those all the way through the year. So by the end of the year, we're pretty confident that the skill set of these scholars is as good or better than anyone else's. You might ask, well, gosh, the match is in September, or I'm interviewing in October, November. I won't be able to tell them that I've had those training sessions yet. And there's nothing to prevent you from telling them about the program. But our program also sends a letter to the programs and telling them about the program, telling them about you, and then telling them about the aspects of the program that are still coming, so that they know by the end of the year that the scholar has had those things. The other advantage we have is being a large academic university. The faculty are all used to scoring trainees on the ACGME's resident scoring profile. And so we have the faculty members use those also to score applicants in our program. What's the advantage? The advantage is when I write the program letter to a program director, I can tell them his mentor over the course of the year has rated he or she as comparable to a PGY2 resident or a PGY3 resident, and that helps coming from it's like UCSD. Beyond those specific things, what I also want to say is that in the big picture, we know that applicants who come through the courses here will forever after be known as somebody who trained in the United States, who trained at the University of California, and that's important to us. So during that year, there's also a global health leadership course. There is the opportunity to take a mini MBA, essentially a business skills for medicine intensive program. And there's also a translational science certificate program inside of it as well. So many different options, all designed to make the scholar as strong as possible going into graduate medical education. Now, I think most people's questions are specifically about the match. We all worry about what our very next step is. And here, that preparation begins long before the match with the current scholars that are already here. We had been working on that for weeks and weeks. That attention is very time locked, and so it's important to stay ahead of the the time curve for many reasons that we can discuss. At the moment, most of the applicants are either finishing any test requirements, and those who have are working on the personal statements. There's a lot that goes into that, and the personal statements in particular, whether they admit it or not, most program directors use the personal statement as an initial first test of communication skills. But they also want to see certain specific things in it. How long-standing your interest in that specialty is, what steps you've taken to move towards your goals, and why their program is the right one for you. And crafting those into it in a brief and interesting way, a way that captures the program director's attention, is challenging. And we spend a lot of time working on that. Just being in the program helps with most of the items in your portfolio that the program directors want. They can see that you now have U.S. healthcare experience, that you've been continuously clinically active, at least since being here, and that you've been exposed to research or actually done some research yourself under a U.S. faculty mentor who can evaluate you for them. The last thing I'll say is we recently added the USMLE 2 clinical knowledge portion of that testing to the program. And the reason for that is really that very first or second slide I showed you. Many applicants come to our programs after spending 12 or 18 months preparing for the USMLEs, not realizing that the time lag in that period is far worse than a mediocre score. And I can't emphasize that enough. Most US faculty, the people who would be making decisions about residents, will have had, 6-8 weeks total of preparation time for those tests, or the preparation is built into their medical school training, and they really don't like to see that loss of clinical momentum. And so the degree that you can minimize that is a huge advantage to you, and that's why we've added that into this program. So on my, I think this is the last slide. We're blessed here to be able to provide these program components because University of California, San Diego is ranked so well in so many areas. So 21st best medical school in the world this year, 5th in the world for world research universities, 20 Nobel laureates, and so that makes our job easier for this reason. Is that there are 1,400 clinical faculty just on this University of California campus, 1,000 residents and fellows. And in terms of the ability to provide specialty training, 98 ACGME accredited residency and fellowship programs, 40 non-accredited. And non-accredited doesn't mean that they don't meet qualification. So don't let that fool you. Non-accredited usually means that specialty is too small nationally to have an accrediting, a central accrediting agency. So for instance, in neurosciences in my department, the Dementia Fellowship has produced many chairmen, department chairmen across the United States, some fairly famous neuroscientists, but is unaccredited. And again, because there is no central accrediting body for them. And there, I could give you many examples that way also. We do also have 20 or 30 other programs for pharmacists and allied health professionals also. So there's everything here that helps us prepare scholars to overcome the obstacles that we discussed in the very beginning. So that's the bulk of what I wanted to discuss this morning. Can you display? This is an opportunity for you to ask questions. If that should show up as a panel on the side. While she's finding that, I can tell you that there were several written questions already submitted by people logging on, and I'll tell you that the one that came up this time, which also does in our lectures, is Dr. Delaney. You mentioned problems with international applications. What did you mean by unrealistic goals and expectations? And Julia, if you can show that first of the other slide behind after the. Good. And then the next slide. Perfect. There we go. So let's take an example. So what does that mean that I have unrealistic goals or unrealistic expectations? Let's say that I took the USMLE 1 and I have a score of 212. You know, that's a passing score. It's okay. It's nothing great. And let's say though that I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. If you look at this chart, the column that says IMG all years, what that means is that there are 62 orthopedic surgery residents in the entire United States that are international medical graduates out of the 3,500 total. And so in a 5-year program, that means that there are likely perhaps 12 intern spots, PGY1 spots. So everyone applying for orthopedic surgery is trying to get one of those 12 spots. And then show us the next slide here. And so if one looks at USMLE 1 scores for orthopedic surgery, they're second from the bottom. Average score of an accepted first-year resident, 245, and mine was 212. And if you look at just the bottom 10% of accepted orthopedic surgery residents, it's 230. I was 212. And so I have a problem. That's not to say that I should give up my goal. If my life's passion is to be an orthopedic surgeon, pursue it. Don't let anybody stop you. It does mean, though, that it may not be a direct line from here to there. It may mean taking a preliminary surgery, general surgery position that allows you to show them that you're able to handle the rigors of ACGB training. It also provides you access to a different match, the R2 match, which allows you to match into programs that suddenly have a gap, and so on. And so that's what I mean by unrealistic expectations. For me to say, I'm going to apply anyway directly to orthopedic surgery with my 212, there's nothing to stop me from doing that, but I'm just not going to be successful. And there are other ways to be successful. So let's see. Okay, let me put on my glasses here. So one of the questions is, how would the program help ECFMG certified older graduates participating in the match? And so I go back to those fundamentals on that other slide. There's a few variables here. If that ECFMG certification was obtained in a program that is ACGME-I accredited, which many international schools are now, the rules have just changed. And so if one has graduated from an ACGME-I accredited residency program in another country, for the first time beginning in a week, you can directly apply for ACGME fellowships. If you graduated from programs that are not ACGMEI accredited, the ECFMG certificate helps you in terms of being qualified to be in the match. But then in terms of match success, it comes back to that first slide all over again. You know, if you haven't been clinically active in all those years, how are you going to overcome that that obstacle, and so on? And pretty much everything else on that list are things that the program can help with. So I hope that answers your question. If not, fire away, or let us know on the Health Sciences International website also. How can this program help with the Dean's Letter? And so in a general sense, you know, over time, we're trying to educate international schools and international deans that the closer it resembles the US or Canadian style MSPE, the better. This program does also, though, send its own letter, and as I said, we tailored it to be able to confidently and truthfully tell the program director that the scholar you know, has met these various qualifications, and to try and make the program director feel more comfortable that the individual can thrive in their residency. I think a follow-on part of that question was, you know, is there some way to substitute something else? The answer is no. The MSPE is a requirement, but the letter from training here for a year or however long it is for the individual can certainly supplement that. So absolutely. Some of the questions that were also sent in, so I hope that answers your question. Some of the questions that were sent in are questions that it can take hours and hours and hours to answer. One of them was, how do I choose a specialty? And that's a very personal decision. Some people will choose the most difficult thing that they're qualified for, and you can do that, but that's not necessarily going to make you happy. And so I would encourage you to think about what will bring you fulfillment, what will keep you interested 10 years from now, and realistically what you're qualified for. So I'm pretty sure that even though I kind of find it interesting that I will probably never be a nuclear engineer, and I can live with that. Almost everything else in terms of these specialties one can work towards. And sometimes these specialties are different than one imagines. And that's why it's very important to obtain some mentor time in the specialty before just choosing. You want to find your career fulfilling. So that was also on here. What do program directors look for in interviews and personal statements? Again, very, very long answer to that question, but in brief, they want to see a long-standing interest in their specialty, that you're committed to that specialty, that you've taken concrete steps to achieve those objectives, and that your career plan makes their residency the next necessary step for you. It's very important to say that, because the program director often is sitting there trying to decide, I've only got 6 spots, I've only got 8 spots, you know, how can I help this person? And in turn, what do they bring to my residency? And so everyone listening to this webinar would bring a lot to a US residency. You trained in a different educational system, I presume. You learned your medical or surgical skills with a different population that has a different epidemiology. You've, in this program, had the confidence to come and train at an elite institution in a second language. All those things are fantastic, and those are the sorts of things you want to make sure come through in an interview and come through in the personal statement. And we can certainly help with that. I suspect that we're out of time. If you have additional questions, feel free to send them to the email address that was just on the screen, hsinternational hsinternational@ucsd.edu, and we're certainly happy to field those. I hope that you found this helpful. If there are other specific topics that you would like to hear discussed, please share those also. We are genuinely happy to help. So thank you and have a good night.